T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Denim Dungeon podcast. I am Brian Rennick, a writer and editor at 49ers Web Zone, and that gentleman over there, sun's out, guns out, giving a little something for the ladies that are watching. That is Tim Sprinkles. Tim, the dungeon is back, my friend. How are you? Let me preface this. How are you, despite being last week COVID positive?
I'm doing okay. I feel all right. Obviously still testing positive, which means still quarantining in a room, which is super fun. I'm only on like day 5 as of right now, but I get to hang out in this glorious room and do some work. And then I get to watch the old TV for most of the day, which is super fun. I could probably do something a little more productive, but here I am. Here we are. We're finally back. It's been way too long.
It has.
You, sir, have grown up on the No Huddle podcast, my friend. Congratulations on all your success, and from what I hear, potentially being Manscaped soon. So, yay for you.
Yeah, I am. I am excited. David Bonilla, our managing editor over at 49ers Web Zone, emailed Al and Zane and I and said that Manscaped had reached out to do a partnership. And so I am eagerly awaiting all of the ball swag that I'll be getting in the mail for us to test out and then do a little trial run. So,
well, if they're going to reach out, make sure that they're nice and gentle when they reach out.
Well, absolutely. Right. That is the most important aspect, right? Gentleness. Absolute gentleness. But yeah, I love it, man. We were texting earlier today. I said, hey, are you able to record tonight? And you were like, yeah. And so I set it all up in our streaming platform and scheduled it for 9:00 tonight. And here we are. And about an hour, maybe a little bit later, but not much, after I scheduled that live stream, the news broke. The 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo have agreed to a restructured contract, which lowers Jimmy Garoppolo's base salary to $6.5 million for the 2022 season, with $500,000 in roster bonuses for a total of $7 million and a cap hit of a shade under $9 million for the 2022 season, which gave the 49ers roughly $18 million in cap space. Add that to the little cap space that they had prior, and the 49ers now have the 4th most cap space in the end. Was it the 5th most cap space in the NFL?
I think it's 5th, but just because
they're top
because John Chapman he tweeted out a GIF of Dave Chappelle with FIF going.
There
fifth.
You go.
So that's all that's sticking out in my head is 5th instead of 4th. But I think I'm going to hit mute right now because you've been on a terror all day since this happened. So I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to let you go I'm going to mute here so you can get on your soapbox and have fun with this. So,
all right. So yeah, I will say this. I was pretty heated when news broke. I will not shy away from that. I was, if you will, emotional about it, right? I had to tweet through it, if you will. And I now see some benefits, right? Some benefits. I will say that. But here's my concern, right? You have a 22-year-old kid who you moved heaven and earth to trade up in the draft last year, the 2021 draft, to come in and replace Jimmy Garoppolo as your starting quarterback. Now, you had a plan in place. You said all last year we looked to the Kansas City Chiefs as our model, where we had an incumbent veteran that we kept on the roster the season that we drafted this rookie quarterback, so that he could sit and learn behind him and then hand over the keys the next season. And it genuinely felt like for this entire offseason, and even, after that final whistle blew in the NFC Championship game, that was going to be the case. Jimmy Garoppolo thought that was going to be the case. He gave a farewell press conference at the end of the season, basically saying like, hey, bye fans, bye media, like I'm out, see ya. Like he knew what was going on. And then the shoulder surgery happened, right? And it totally tanked his trade value. And then it was just an entire offseason of wondering when or if Jimmy Garoppolo was going to get traded. And as the season wore on, or the offseason wore on, it became more and more apparent that there weren't going to be any trade partners. Now, was that because of a lack of leverage on the 49ers part, because the majority of teams that needed a starting quarterback had gotten one before Jimmy Garoppolo could even pass a physical? For sure. I think that's a big part of it. And so then it became, well, you can't go into the season with Jimmy Garoppolo counting $27 million against the salary cap. That just doesn't make sense. That's not good roster management. So then the only feasible option looked like release, because to me, and I said this on Twitter earlier, this was not even in the realm of possibilities, because it did not in any way make sense to me that Jimmy Garoppolo would agree to a significant pay cut. He went from 27 million down to a shade under 9 to stay with a team as their backup quarterback, a team that has already said, look, man, we don't want you anymore. Like, we've moved on. We've got this kid. We're moving on. And, it's almost like a situation where you've got a couple, maybe it's a married couple, they decide to separate, divorce, whatever, but they live together still, right? Like, that's kind of what it feels like. The 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo mutually agreed to part ways, right? And now he's back in the building, not only in the building, but ostensibly the number 2 quarterback. And so it just didn't make sense to me, mainly because for me, what I worry about is what kind of effect this has on Trey Lance and his leadership ability for this team. I don't worry about Trey Lance. I don't worry that Trey is not mentally tough enough to handle Jimmy Garoppolo in the locker room with him. I think that's fine. Honestly, he probably has no problem with it. What I'm worried about is the effect it has on the men that Trey Lance, as a 22-year-old kid, is tasked to lead. Leading a group of men requires those men to buy into your leadership. And if the guy that was here for the past 5 seasons is still here, and he's a guy that those guys have gone to war with and have won with, what's to say that as Trey Lance struggles this season, because he will, let's not front on that. There are going to be times where Trey Lance struggles. There just are. Are those same players who came to Kyle Shanahan last season when Shanahan had the Trey Lance package and said, hey, you got to stop running this. This is not beneficial to Jimmy. It's negative on his leadership. Are those same players going to go to Shanahan and be like, hey, Trey's really not cutting it. I think it's time to move to Jimmy? That's what I'm worried about. That's my biggest concern. I don't dislike Jimmy Garoppolo. I never have, and I never will. I like Jimmy. I recognize the deficiencies in his game. I recognize that this offense has reached its absolute apex with him as quarterback, and it was time to move on. And there were definitely times where Jimmy Garoppolo frustrated me, especially on the field, but I don't have a problem with him. Is he one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL? 100%. Does he deserve a starting job somewhere? 100%. Should he be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns while Deshaun Watson is on suspension? Football wise, I think yes. Personally, I think F the Browns forever, and they don't deserve Jimmy. But also, is Jimmy Garoppolo better than whoever they're going to throw under center in Pittsburgh? 100%. Is Jimmy Garoppolo better than anything they have in Carolina? 100%. Right? So does this restructure portend a trade either soon or in the future? It could, right? He has a no trade clause, but ultimately he can waive that if it's the right situation. So I was heated to begin with because it just felt like this was enough ammunition for especially those that are vocal on Twitter about Trey Lance and their hatred for Trey Lance, and for the media to just constantly ask this question every single press conference, especially if Trey's struggling. Well, are you going to move to Jimmy? Hey, are you going to move to Jimmy? And it just seems like an unnecessary distraction in a season that was already going to be bumpy with Trey Lance as he develops. So now it's going to be bumpy with Jimmy Garoppolo waiting in the wings to possibly take over if things go sideways. And I just feel like that's not the ideal situation for Trey moving forward.
Are you done with your tantrum?
I'm done. That was not a tantrum. I was throwing tantrums earlier. That was not a tantrum.
It's true. You were way more controlled and articulate than I was expecting. I was expecting you to like slam things and be, just be that little crying toddler that I text you earlier. All right. I mean, honestly, like it's time. Like the grown-ups are going to talk for a second, if that's okay. Like, here's the deal. That was not a shot at you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm honestly gonna say this. There's a couple of people that have been voicing their opinions today since this has come out, especially like John Chapman and who else? I'll think of it in a second.
Eric Crocker,
because I'm having COVID brain right now and I just can't pull things. But both of them said the same thing that I believe. The 49ers won today. They got better today. And I need you to understand that you have to look at it from the organizational point of view. First and foremost, like the 49ers do not care what anybody outside of that organization has to say about them, period. They don't care what you, me, or anybody else in the media or in the podcasts, the content creators, anybody has to say about this Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance situation. And it's clear to me that Kyle Shanahan said before all of this took place, there's a video out there of him stating, we are not going to give Jimmy Garoppolo up for nothing. That is not what you do. An NFL franchise does not give up a good quarterback for nothing. They were never going to cut him, period. He said it from the beginning. The writing was on the wall. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo's camp understood they had to restructure his deal if there was no legitimate trade partner out there right now. And nothing happened in camp that was so detrimental. Yes, we were all kind of waiting on the Deshaun Watson thing, but in all honesty, 11 games with Jacoby Brissett and that roster, there's still potentially maybe a playoff or a wild card team in a loaded AFC with that entire Browns roster. But let's be honest, the Browns organization never makes good decisions anyway. So there was never any thought in my mind that they were going to be like, let's game plan for the first 11, get Jimmy Garoppolo. Deshaun Watson something else could come out. He could suck. You never know, and have that backup plan moving into the playoffs. So the Browns are kind of out. They were never going to let the Seahawks get him if they cut him. And this guarantees that the 49ers are now going to get something for Jimmy Garoppolo, whether or not he plays out the rest of the season and they get the compensatory pick, or they actually get something from another team where there's a disaster and a quarterback gets hurt or something happens and a team is in dire need of getting a quarterback. So well done, John Lynch. Well done, Kyle Shanahan. I know that they've been upfront and honest with Trey Lance from the beginning. It's his team. Like, you don't bring Jimmy Garoppolo back with a huge restructured deal. Trey Lance makes more than Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So in this restructure, Trey's being paid more. He's the guy that's taken all the snaps in the preseason, in camp. And like, there's no doubt in my mind, like, look at the 1-2 quarterback combination now that the 49ers have in regards to a QB room. Name a better starter backup combination in the NFL. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo was voted by the players
Geno
last
Smith,
year.
Drew Lock.
That one is solid. However, Jimmy Garoppolo just missed out on the top 100 by his peers in the NFL Network top 100, right? Like, he was 114 or something, 104, something like that.
I would say I don't know what number, but I know it was. I think it was less than 114 because it was
Right.
it was really close. Yeah.
So even like players around the NFL understand that Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy that's going to get you wins. Like, that's what's respected. I know everyone says QB, like, wins aren't a QB stat. However, the people that know the game, that are around him, that literally play the game and don't talk about it, voted him like pretty darn high. So all of that said and done, like, let's think back over the Shanahan regime. What is the one downfall, the Achilles heel, if you will, for a 49ers season? It's when their starting quarterback gets hurt during the year and then the season tanks. When they've had the starter or a starter caliber quarterback be able to play the entire or the majority of the season, they make the playoffs and they make it to the NFC Championship game, and they either win it or they lose it in the final 10 minutes. Like, it's not rocket science that you want a guy that can get you to that point with a roster that's loaded. Like, be adults in the room right now and have that, like, think outside of yourself for a second and your ego. All of these 49er fans who are just blowing up. And it's apparent to me that not one single person outside of just a couple of people out there have been actually in a locker room and understand the dynamics that take place. I can't tell you how many quarterbacks have stated in that QB room, Jordan Palmer, for one, who I went to a quarterback camp with, and I know. And then my buddy who coaches with Ty Detmer, who used to play at BYU, JT O'Sullivan, who I played against in college and now does the QB school, phenomenal job. Like, they always talk about the fact that the guys in the QB room, they're not at war with one another. They're all on the same team. They all have the same goal. They're there to make each other better, and the best player is going to play. Like, the ultimate goal is the team's success. And you can't argue with the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is not a team guy. Like, that's why the guys love him so much, is he's a team guy first. So all of these arguments about how, it's going to hurt Trey Lance's confidence, and the quarterback controversy is going to swell when the first time Trey Lance has a bad game or he doesn't do well or they lose. No, that's not what's going to happen. It's Trey's team unless you get to week 6 and the 49ers are 1-5 and Trey has like 20 picks. Like, he has to have the absolute worst possible season in the first half of the season for there even to be a thought in Shanahan's mind where he's going to go to Jimmy Garoppolo. And that's not going to happen, because Kyle Shanahan is honestly going to put Trey Lance in situations where he's going to be successful. Kyle's talked about it. There's ups and downs. There's going to be bumps in the road. Like, if you listen to what he says, he's been honest and given us the answers to the test along the way. Everybody wants to like read into things and look deep down and try and figure out this secret code. No, it's not a secret code. It's like, he's being honest. Trey Lance is the guy. Jimmy Garoppolo is the best possible backup out there, period. He restructured his deal. Great job. Tons of cap room. Top 5 salary or top 5 cap space right now for the 49ers. Great job. Not going to get nothing. He's not going to go to Seattle right now and in week 2 potentially beat you. Like all of that. Good job 49ers. Good job John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. Trey Lance is going to be fine. If there's one dude who's 22 years old, who's mature enough to be able to handle all of this, the one guy that they've said from the beginning is the most mature in terms of being able to handle this stuff has been Trey Lance. So I don't want to hear any of it. It was a great move. 49ers win this one. Jimmy Garoppolo actually wins this one too, because he is now an extremely desirable trade partner from the 49ers. That cap hit is nothing. And I don't want to hear, oh, he's got a no trade clause. He had a no trade clause before. Like, what are you talking about? Like, same thing. He can waive trade that he doesn't want. He wants to go to a contender. He doesn't want to go to a crap team. And who knows, maybe that was the only thing that he had possible was the Seattle Seahawks and another crap team. Like, why would you want to go? And
the Seahawks are going to be crap this year. You're not wrong.
They're going to be horrible. But like, why would you want to go debut or like your resume out there in a season where you have like little to no opportunity to win games, when his biggest, like the biggest thing about Jimmy Garoppolo is that dude wins games. Like that dude has a great winning record. If he goes to a shit team, excuse my language, he goes to a really, really bad team and doesn't produce wins. Now what do you have?
Yeah, that kind of ruins his narrative or his legacy, if you will, right? Because like you said, that is, I mean, if you were to ask somebody like, what is it about Jimmy Garoppolo that is most desirable? I mean, ultimately that's probably the thing that you land on, right? Is quote unquote, he's a winner, right? The 49ers won when he was on the field. Because, you know, when it comes to like just flat out skill set and things like that, you know, he's got an elite release in terms of its quickness, but he's got the moxie to throw it over the middle, right? But outside of that, I mean, I don't know, physically speaking, I don't know what else you would point to. But you're right. If he went to a team that wasn't very good, or not, at least didn't have significant level of roster talent, you know, he might lose that narrative, if you will, right? Because he would start to lose games. You know, I never felt like this was a negative for Trey specifically. Like, I don't think Trey ever looked at this and went, oh my God, like Jimmy Garoppolo's back and like, what am I going to do now? And I honestly don't even think he feels more pressure. Like I said, for me, my biggest concern was, you know, is there going to be a situation in the locker room where some of those more veteran and vocal players come to Kyle Shanahan like they did last season in defense of Jimmy Garoppolo, but in this situation in support of Jimmy Garoppolo, to say, hey, like this kid is struggling. Let's put Jimmy in. We know he can do it. That I think, and if Jimmy Garoppolo sees any time on the field this season with the 49ers, and it's not because of an injury to Trey Lance, I think that's a disaster in terms of Trey Lance's development. Is it a disaster for the 49ers and their pursuit of the playoffs and a Lombardi this season? No, obviously, right? We know that Jimmy Garoppolo can play well in this system, but you've got to also look at the future of the franchise, right? That's what Trey Lance is. And if you do anything this season that possibly, you know, thwarts or stunts or stunts his development, destroys his confidence, whatever the case may be, you know, and maybe we're not giving Trey Lance enough credit. Like you said, like if there's one 22-year-old kid that could probably handle this, it's probably him. The thing that I'm most impressed with is his mental makeup. It's who he is as a person. You know, the skill set obviously is there, but there are tons of, I mean, look at Jamarcus Russell. Jamarcus Russell could throw the ball through a freaking brick house, right? But didn't have the mental makeup to do anything in the league. And so, you know, that is what I'm most excited about is the person of Trey Lance more than the physical tools. And so, you know, I'm not concerned about Jimmy Garoppolo's presence destroying his confidence like I said earlier, I am simply worried about the supporters that Jimmy Garoppolo has in that locker room, and whether or not at any point, if they are struggling, do they become vocal about wanting Jimmy Garoppolo in there. And then the other thing is unwanted distractions, right? Like, again, I feel like football coaches are the most anti-distraction coaches in any sport, right? Like, it's all about insulating the team, right? They don't want any distractions, no nonsense, no whatever. And this just invites distraction, right? Because that situation is likely going to be a distraction all season. A, if Trey struggles, or B, if he stays on the team the full season. And maybe he won't, right? Like we said, this makes him a far more attractive trade candidate today than he was yesterday, because he has a much more palatable contract. And that is probably part of this calculus for why they did this as well. And again, it wasn't my biggest surprise was that Jimmy Garoppolo accepted this. And so I know that you called it a win-win, and you could argue that it's a win-win. It's a win for the 49ers, right? They got precious cap space, which they didn't have before. And they have arguably the best backup quarterback in the league. And you could call it a win for Jimmy Garoppolo because the alternative was likely a release, right? Which gives him, what was it, like $1.5 million in terms of guarantees that were on there. But also, I kind of view this as both sides lost, right? Because this was not the outcome that either side wanted. The 49ers wanted to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo and get something back for him. And Jimmy Garoppolo wanted to go to a team and be able to start, right? Because ultimately, for him, I think personally, if he would have been able to go to a team and start for a season and play well, he would have been in line for another massive contract. Whereas now, you're probably looking at a contract more in line with what Mitch Trubisky got after being Josh Allen's backup last year, which was like $10 million from the Steelers. So he's a backup this year, likely in line for a 1-year prove it deal next year. And then if that doesn't go well, who knows, right? So ultimately, this is not, I don't think this is what either side wanted, but they're trying just to make the best of a bad situation now.
But like you said, it is what the 49ers wanted, because they said it. Kyle Shanahan said, we're not going to give him up for nothing. So the fact is, they either said they were going to get something desirable for him, or they're going to keep him on the roster. Like, that's what he said. So the 49ers got what they wanted. Ultimately, Kyle got what he wanted. It wasn't 1A, it was 1B. Like, you don't give up a good quarterback in the NFL for nothing. Like, that's quote from Kyle Shanahan. So here's the deal. Like, the only person I really feel bad for in this entire situation is Rita Oak. And that is the artist who has been drawing Jimmy Garoppolo on Twitter
every
day until he gets traded, and she draws him in another unique and awesome situation. And let's be honest, like, I think it was day 208 today of days that she's produced something new.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time.
And she's created this monster. Does she stop now, or does she continue this wonderful task that she has created? Because her brilliance has now burdened her with the obligation of continuing this wonderful production of art. Let me tell you.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She has done a heck of a job this entire offseason. But yeah, I don't know what it means for Rita. But I do know that it's likely not what she anticipated. I will say that. So
no, it is not any of us fans anticipated. Now, I'm willing to bet that both sides, arguably both sides, knew that this was a very likely outcome, and that's why I think the deal was done the way it was. If Jimmy Garoppolo's camp thought from the very beginning that they were going to either get traded or they were going to be released, they wouldn't have had the structure of this deal done, with the incentives of playing, with the incentives of roster bonuses, all the things that kind of come along with it to beef up that deal, like that to me just says that this is something that they've been contemplating, they've been communicating about, and they knew that this was a possibility. So we've spent 30 minutes talking about Jimmy Garoppolo when I'm sure long ago, like podcasts ago, we said, we're done with Jimmy. We're never talking about him again. 30 minutes.
Well, this was, I don't know that there was any podcaster, analyst, beat writer. I don't think there was anybody that anticipated this result. I really don't.
There might have been a former scout. I mean, that
God.
said all.
That's the other thing that frustrates me, is it gives people like that oxygen, and that bothers me. I'm like, that guy just needs to go away, and now he won't. You know what I mean? And it's just like,
he wasn't going away before, and that's fine. And I just a little bit of digging on that, like little bit of background info that was somebody who legitimately was like a coffee boy and burned himself out of like an internship job because of his pestering and his ideas and his I'm going to be GM one day type mentality, and just ostracized himself from the entire organization. Like, yuck.
Yeah. Well, when you idolize a double murderer like Aaron Hernandez, and then also are on Twitter like with vocal support for Deshaun Watson, I have a hard time taking anything you say seriously. Because you don't seem like a very, I don't know. I don't want to call him a garbage human being, but I just did. So there we are. Anyway, regardless, we talked for 30 minutes about Trey Lance, but when we scheduled this, or you're right about Jimmy Garoppolo. See, I'm good, right? I just did a control, find, and replace in my brain, and it was control, find, and replace Jimmy Garoppolo with Trey Lance. I just did it in my brain instead of, in a Google Doc or in a Word document. But, but yeah, so, when we originally scheduled this, it was to kind of give some reflections on the offseason, and then do our 53-man roster prediction as we are recording this. For those of you who are listening, on your podcast platform of choice, we are recording this Monday night, August 29th. The 53-man roster cut down is tomorrow, August 30th by 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so the 49ers have to get down to 53 players by then. And so we are going to go over our predictions here to end this episode. But before we get there, I do want to ask Tim, what are some reflections that you have had on this offseason? What are some things that surprised you? What stuck out? What did you think was important? What wasn't important? This was a tumultuous offseason. What did you think about it?
Well, I mean, I was encouraged by what I saw from game one. And I think everybody was very, very encouraged by the fact that Trey Lance had a really, really good showing in terms of what he could be, right? Little bit accuracy issues, not necessarily, in my opinion, from fundamental stuff outside of footwork. Footwork for him is going to be very big. I've watched every single snap he's taken in the preseason, and for me, it comes down to, is he taking false steps? Is at the top of his drop? Are his feet where they need to be so that he can release it on time? And saw good side and potentially maybe like the fortunate side in game one with Trey Lance. And then we saw the peaks and the valleys, right? Like the valleys in game three, because he didn't play in game two, but that was the piece for me that even though like the 49ers lost to the Texans, they didn't put up any points, there were still positive things from Trey Lance. Like it wasn't a complete goose egg. He didn't throw a couple of picks, and it wasn't like he fumbled. And like the valleys were that of he didn't have a solid offensive line. Like, his tackles weren't there. He didn't have Elijah Mitchell. He didn't, like, Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and Kittle weren't playing the entire game. Like, they were rotating in guys, and then they kind of sat out. Like, nothing about that offense to me worried me, because, and Kyle Shanahan is obviously not opening up the entire playbook. So the peaks and valleys were there. My takeaway is that Trey Lance is human. My takeaway is that we're going to see exactly what we expected from Trey Lance as the season starts. Like, we're going to see good and we're going to see not so good. We're going to see opportunities for growth. The question is, one, like, is the defense going to be healthy enough to be that top 5 defense and allow the growth opportunities for Trey Lance in the beginning part of the season? What I saw from the defense was extreme takeaways. Like, we are going to see turnovers from that defense this year. They are ball hawks. They are going to go after the football. We are going to see probably more interceptions than we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years combined for the 49ers. Like, they go after it. I think it's obvious to me that the 49ers defensive line yet again is going to be the base, the one attribute of this team that can be relied upon.
The strength.
From top to bottom, these guys are just dudes. Like, Nick Bosa is probably going to have a breakout season where 20 sacks is in the realm of possibility. We're going to see Drake Jackson erupt onto the scene, and he's not going to get a ton of PT in terms of consistent snaps. He's going to get a lot of spot play, but what is he going to be able to do in those moments? And I think we're going to see some extremely athletic plays and extremely bright, really, really high peaks from him. I think we're going to see all pro Fred again. He's going to come back this year and be that all pro caliber player. And then I think ultimately, and again, it's a huge if, but if the 49ers 2 cornerbacks can remain healthy for the year, this 49ers defense will be the best defense the 49ers have produced since the Harbaugh years, and possibly better than that. They are incredibly fast. They are hard hitting. They are like, there is no bigger fear as a quarterback than going up against an extremely strong defensive line, cornerbacks who can play man to man, who are incredibly smart, safeties that fly around the field and aren't afraid to hit, and then linebackers that can cover and also can fill their run gaps. This defense has everything. The only question is, will they remain healthy? My takeaway is the 49ers are exactly who I thought they were moving forward. They have 21 players, in my opinion, that are unbelievably good. And they have one position that has the potential to be lights out. I still believe in Trey Lance. I still believe he is the guy. And now, even if something crazy happens, we learned today that the 49ers will have a quarterback in place that can get them to the NFC Championship game or Super Bowl with this roster. So there was my takeaway.
Yeah, I think, for me, there were a couple things that I thought were essentially the biggest storylines, if you will, of the offseason. My favorite is that the 49ers front office, and you can say Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch if you want, but the decision makers, we'll call them those, finally invested in the secondary, which I think is something that they haven't done until now. And you could say, that they got Richard Sherman, and I agree. And Sherman was incredible in 2019, but you still got Richard Sherman on the downside of his career, not as a young ascending player. They paid a lot of money to Charvarius Ward, but he is a young and ascending player. And honestly, I don't even think we've seen his best football yet. Right. And so now you've got 2 guys in Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley who make one of the better starting cornerback duos in the NFL. Are they the best? Probably not. But by the end of the season, people may look at them that way. And then on top of that, they brought back Jason Verrett, who is going to start this season on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform. And honestly, I think they look at him as kind of like a mid-season trade acquisition, right? I think they're going to allow him time to continue to recover from that ACL injury. They're not going to rush him back like they did in 2020, 2019, when they signed him in the 2019 offseason. He was coming off an Achilles tear, and he came in, I think it was game 3 against the Steelers, game 2 or game 3, got burned a couple times, and then went back on IR and was done for the season. Then came back in 2020 and was Jason Verrett again. And then obviously in 2021, first game, he tears his ACL. So Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. And then if you get Jason Verrett and he's 2020 Jason Verrett, even if he's 80% 2020 Jason Verrett, there's hardly a better third cornerback out there. And then they also invested in the position last draft with Lenore and Ambry Thomas. And then they did it again this draft with Samuel Womack and Tariq Castro Fields. And Samuel Womack has been a revelation. Samuel Womack is going to be the starting nickelback, the starting slot corner on this defense. He is replacing K'Wan Williams. He's quite literally a physical clone of K'Wan Williams, but he's younger, much faster, and he's got the arm length of someone that's 6'2", and he is 5'10" or 5'11". I'm excited about Womack, which leads me to my second big thing, which was, man, this draft class. They didn't have a first-round pick, and they might have one of the better draft classes in the NFL.
I agree. Good point.
They did not. They did not have a first-round pick. Their first pick was in the second round. That's when they got Drake Jackson. The rest of the league is eventually going to ask themselves, how did we allow Drake Jackson to fall that far? And how did we allow him to get to the 49ers to pair with Nick Bosa? Because I think those two, not this season, he's a rookie. He's going to get his feet wet. I think he's going to be impressive. But next season, when you've got Bosa and Jackson on the edges, that's going to be terrifying for every offense that they go against. But Drake Jackson in the second round, then you've got Ty Davis-Price, who we haven't seen a ton of, but I'm not ready to say like he's not going to be a contributor. He runs hard, and that's what they got him for. I've been on record that I still think that was poor value. It is what it is. They got him, right? Danny Gray in the 4th round, Spencer Burford in the 4th round, looks like is going to be the starting right guard. Samuel Womack in the 5th round is going to be the starting nickelback. And then you also got Nick Zakel, who's going to be a practice squad tackle. You got Tariq Castro Fields, and you got Kalia Davis, and then you got Brock Purdy with Mr. Irrelevant in the 7th round. The number of contributors that they had in the preseason that looked to be major contributors in the regular season on a roster that is stacked with elite talent is mind-boggling to me. What they did in this draft, I don't think enough people talk about it. And I think by the end of the season, they're going to look at this draft class in a lot of ways very similar to some of those elite draft classes that, like the Saints draft class from, like, I think it was 2017, right? There are arguably, with Jackson, Davis-Price, Danny Gray, Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, right? There's 5 right there that are likely starters either in 2022 or 2023 and beyond. 5 in a draft class, right? Where if you get 2 or 3, you're thrilled. You're over the moon, right? They got 5, and that doesn't even include Castro Fields, who I think is going to be really good in this league when he gets an opportunity. And that also doesn't include Kalia Davis, who I think is going to be our next DJ Jones, right? Now, granted, he has his knee injury, right? Which is why he's on the reserve non-football injury list, and he will be for this entire season. He's going to have the entire season to recover. But I think that guy would have been probably a low second, early mid-round pick if he didn't have his knee injury. So again, you're talking about just an elite level draft class without a first-round pick. That's just impressive to me.
It is. However, like I think everyone kind of forgot that Samuel Womack was destined to be this guy right from the beginning because they drafted him in the 5th round. And we all know, like, that's the round where the 49ers find the gem. And
unbelievable. It's unreal. It's legitimately like how do you even explain it? You can't.
Okay. So here's where I take a look at the 49ers, like the scouting department for the 49ers, where they really lock in after the 3rd round, like it's 3rd, 4th, 5th, and beyond, right? The big guys, the big names, the round 1, the round 2, those guys kind of fall in a different field, but then the scouting department of an organization that is really able to understand players and how they play and the fit within the organization, it really speaks to those guys. I'm really impressed with that. But you bring up an excellent point. The fact that you could have Spencer Buford drafted in the 4th round being a starter, Samuel Womack 5th round basically being a starter, Danny Gray drafted in the 3rd round after Davis Price, right?
That's right.
And
Compensatory 3rd round pick.
And I
Not
feel
4th.
like Danny Gray is that guy that not only is he a burner, not only is he going to be the guy that takes the top off the defense, and we saw it in the first preseason game, but he's also a dude that likes to block. Like, he's physical and he's decent size. Like, he's not a little tiny guy. He's not, no, all of the guys in the NFL that are extreme burners at the wide receiver position, they're outside of DK Metcalf. Like, they're not necessarily bigger guys
who's a freak.
Yeah, that's a 1st round pick, right? Like,
right.
1st round top. Was he top of the 2nd round, or was it the end of the 1st
Yeah,
round?
he was the end of the 2nd round, but yeah.
It was that long?
A lot of people. Yeah.
However, Danny Gray, excellent 3rd round pick. And then you have potentially 4 or 5 starters for the 49ers moving forward from this draft class. Anybody that questions John Lynch, the job he's doing, and the scouting department for the 49ers, they don't know football at this point. Because if you look top to bottom from the draft classes as they move forward, yes, there have been a couple of misses. There have been a couple of, why are they drafting a running back in the 3rd round? Obviously, when you have somebody like a Trey Sermon on the roster already that really kind of tried to fill the role that Davis Price is going to fill. But when you look at it, I think TDP is better. And I think he's more plug and play ready right now than Trey Sermon is. And our 53-man roster predictions are going to reflect that, in my opinion. Like, he's a dude, man. Like, he's a guy in a short yardage situation. If I had to pick between him and Trey Sermon, I'm going Davis Price. Period. Like, I don't even know if I'd go Jeff Wilson Jr. over Davis Price at this point. Davis Price runs different. Jeff Wilson Jr. goes to a dark place.
Yeah, he does.
He's more, but Jeff Wilson Jr. is a little bit more on the Elijah Mitchell side than he is Davis Price side. Like, when you look at the two, if you need a banger, if you need somebody that's going to run in between the tackles,
TDP.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff Wilson Jr.'s done it. And he's had games where he's been electric and he's been phenomenal. I think back to that New England Patriots game. However, as a rookie,
signature game,
as a rookie coming in where no NFL experience and he's in the conversation, that's a 3rd round pick. Now I'm like, okay. I guarantee you this year, if Davis Price gets red zone touchdowns, and let's just say he gets 5, he gets short yardage situations and he's successful more often than he's not, you're going to eat your words in terms of thinking that he's not worth the value of that 3rd round pick, because look at the draft overall. Like, if he's getting significantly productive minutes, absolutely he's worth a 3rd round pick, whether or not he's a running back or not. And who else was there in the draft at that time? Look at all the guys they got. Like, starting cornerback, starting lineman, contributing receivers. You have guys that are going to produce down the road. You have offensive linemen that, quite frankly, I mean,
well, and
these guys,
we're talking about the guys that they drafted, but they also brought in 2 guys in their undrafted free agent pool in guard Jason Poe and running back Jordan Mason. That also do have a distinct possibility of making this 53-man roster. And we're going to get there in just a second, but yeah, again, with the value in the 3rd round, I just keep looking at the fact that Nick Cross, the safety out of Maryland, was still there when they drafted Davis Price. And now with the injury to Jimmy Ward in his IR stint, which means that he's going to miss at least the first 4 weeks, right? And according to Matt Barrows, the hamstring tear is the most severe grade it can be. And if you look at different different things out there, that's an 8 to 12 week injury. And that takes it past week 4. It would be nice to have a guy like Nick Cross, who is going to be the starting safety in Indianapolis, on the roster, especially when you consider this is a contract year for Jimmy Ward. He's already 31, and you would have had an in-house candidate to just take over in 2023. But I digress. So for me, the top 2 things, investing in the secondary and then hitting an absolute home run in the draft. Those are the 2 things that I think were the most important aspects of the offseason. And then obviously, moving on from Jimmy Garoppolo as the starter. Now we know, not moving on from him as the player, but moving on from him as the starter to Trey Lance. And I'm excited to see what that offense looks like with Lance under center. But now we're at about 50 minutes here. We're going to end on our 53-man roster prediction, and then we'll see how we do tomorrow, right? Because the roster cut down is tomorrow at 1 p.m. So here we go. I'm going to put it up on the screen. We are going to do our 53-man roster projections, and we're just going to compare. We're not going to spend a ton of time on every position group, just because there are some that we have similar or the same players. And so just kind of discuss some of the differences that we see. And then we'll see how we do tomorrow. So let me go ahead and pull up our Google sheet. I am for my job. Tim and I are both in education. Tim is an administrator in education. I am a teacher. In my role as a teacher, one of the things that I am learning to be is, as I said the other day, a freak in the sheets. I am getting a lot better at Google Sheets and Excel and formulas and all that good stuff. But so our 49ers 53-man roster projection, and at quarterback, obviously we have the same Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think this Jimmy Garoppolo restructure spells the end for Nate Sudfeld as a 49er, because ultimately I think Brock Purdy will likely be the guy. Now, one thing that may happen that neither one of us have on here is Brock Purdy actually making the 53-man, because here's the one thing that I think the calculus in that is who is more likely to pass through waivers, right? If you cut Brock Purdy, he goes to waivers, and another team can claim him, and they get his 4 years of control, right? Versus Nate Sudfeld, if you cut him, he's immediately a free agent. You could simply re-sign him to the practice squad, right? So do they risk losing Brock Purdy through waivers, or do they give him a 53-man spot? I don't know what they think is more important. I imagine that the roster spot is more valuable than Brock Purdy himself. And so I just have Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. And then ultimately, I actually think Nate Sudfeld will be the practice squad quarterback.
I don't think anybody picks up Brock Purdy. He's going to wind up back on the practice squad. I do think somebody's going to pick up Nate Sudfeld, because of the fact that he's a very big, he has an NFL body. He's been in the league for a number of years. He actually showed the fact this preseason that he has some ability to be successful in an offensive scheme. He has touch, he has anticipation. He's going to be fine. Like I fully think that Nate Sudfeld could get picked up by a team. That's fine. And I'm okay with the 49ers putting Brock Purdy on the practice squad because that dude he needs some time. He needs to develop, but there's a reason he was Mr. Irrelevant, right? Like there's a reason he got to that point in the draft. Like every team passed on him numerous times. And then it's not like he had a preseason that was so unbelievable and awe-inspiring. He had ups and he had downs. But ultimately, if there's not a ton on him in the NFL, which there isn't, there's 3 games and there's not an extensive amount of film on him in those preseason games. There's a bit, but not a ton. He still comes down to being a relatively shorter quarterback, which NFL teams seem to shy away from. Nate Sudfeld is significantly bigger than he is. And like it or not, I'm a quarterback who is 6'1", and I was always looked at second rather than go like every single time. If a guy was 6'4" versus me, that guy would get the first look. I get the second look. Like it's just what it is. Coaches view height because it's really hard to see over an offensive line when everyone is taller than you. Like
especially the middle of the field, right?
Yeah, well, there's no knock on Brock Purdy. I think he's going to actually be a relatively decent backup in the NFL, and who knows, he's going to get some starts here and there. He's kind of like a Nick Mullins. He's like a little more athletic Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
And if you remember that graphic, that one time he was most passing yards compared with who was it? Like Patrick Mahomes and whoever
second most passing yards in their first however many games behind only Patrick Mahomes. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Not bad. All right. So let's move on to running backs. Again, we have our top 4 are the same: Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson Jr., Ty Davis Price, Trey Sermon. We both think that Trey Sermon will make the squad. I think personally
that is my 53rd player making the roster, by the way.
Which is interesting because you have him above JaMychal Hasty. Is that
I copied and pasted yours, and then it was easier for me to just Control C and then Control V for all of you for who want to know Brian's term of what he said in the sheets.
Freaking the sheets.
Okay. However, Trey Sermon for me is that last guy on. I almost didn't have him making it. Like he's still if he doesn't make the roster tomorrow, I'm not shocked.
It wouldn't be shocking to me either. I just think that his draft pedigree would likely get him claimed by another team. And I just think that the 49ers, if you invest in a player in the 3rd round, you're not going to cut him 1 year later, despite disappointing performances in the previous season. And, John Lynch has talked him up about his performances so far this offseason, not necessarily in the preseason games because they haven't been great, but I think he gets another shot. The one difference we both have them carrying 5 running backs. You have that 5th running back, technically 6 if you include Juszczyk. But you have that last guy as JaMychal Hasty. I have it as Jordan Mason. Personally, I think that Mason, who displayed pretty deft receiving skills at Georgia Tech, I think he actually adds a little bit more than Hasty in terms of his ability to break tackles and run like through walls. Like that dude is a beast. And so if they are looking for a 3rd down back, I think he provides a little bit different element than JaMychal Hasty does, though Hasty is good. And one of Hasty's, to me, one of his best traits is his pass blocking ability. And so perhaps that is what wins him the job, but he does have a little bit of the fumbleitis. And so that might, that might keep him off the roster.
Maybe. The quick thing that I'm going to say about the running backs is you kind of look at who they are as runners, and Trey Sermon and Davis Price are very similar. Jeff Wilson Jr. is kind of unique where he has like he has power. He can run through people. However, he falls, in my opinion, a little bit more on he's fast. He's able to find a cut, stick his foot in the ground, get through a gap and go, kind of in that Elijah Mitchell realm. I don't see them carrying Mason when they're keeping Sermon and Davis Price. I see if Elijah Mitchell gets hurt, the running back that is most like him on the roster is JaMychal Hasty. He's a guy that's a slasher. He's fast. He's elusive. That's the type of guy. That's why I want JaMychal Hasty, because we're keeping Sermon and we're keeping Davis Price and we're keeping Wilson Jr. You don't want a fourth power runner and one kind of slashing, very elusive fast back.
Oh, that's a good point. All right. So moving on to receivers, the only difference here is I have them because they carried 6 running backs, which is not something that they have done in the past. To me, part of why I added that 5th running back was because of what happened last season, the attrition at the position that had Deebo Samuel taking handoffs in the backfield and running between the tackles. With the amount of money that they invested in him this offseason, I anticipate them not wanting to do that anymore. I do still think he's going to get carries. I just don't think they're going to be those hard fought between the tackles type carries. And so they add an extra body, which means they take one away from the receiver room. And so I have them keeping 5 wide receivers instead of 6. And that is Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, and Danny Gray. You have the same 5, but you have them also keeping Malik Turner as the 6th wide receiver.
I just think he adds a lot as a gunner on special teams. That's where he makes the roster in special teams rather than as a receiver. However, in my opinion, it's nice when you have a lot of 3 receiver sets to be able to have a 1 and a 2 in each position rather than a 1, a 2, a 1, a 2, and then a 1. So that's why I want Malik Turner over my former Coug. I'm gonna say I hope he makes the practice squad. Like,
is that Tay Martin?
It is Tay Martin. Now, people are gonna say, no, he went to Oklahoma State. You're right. He was drafted out of Oklahoma State. However, he spent the previous years at Washington State as a Cougar. So in your face.
At tight end, we have the same 3, George Kittle, Charlie Warner, and Ross Dwelley. I could see them not carrying 5 running backs, 6 if you include Juice, and adding a 4th tight end with Tyler Kroft or Troy Fumagalli. But the other interesting bit of news that came out today, the 49ers brought in, I think it was like 7 players for a tryout. One of those players was Dalton Keene, who was drafted by the New England Patriots in the 2020 draft in the 3rd round. I was actually pretty high on Dalton Keene coming out. That was one of the players that I was hoping would make his way to the 49ers. I've very much felt like the tight end 2 position has needed to be addressed on this team since, well, forever, really. They had 1 season of Jordan Reed, although, Reed was out with injuries for a handful of those games. But I just feel like adding a second viable receiving threat at tight end would really kind of elevate this offense. At this point, it is just George Kittle. Charlie Warner's coming along as a receiver, but he's mainly just a blocker. And then Ross Dwelley, hey, I love Ross Dwelley. He's a local guy, right?
Ross the boss.
Went to Oak Ridge High School in El Dorado Hills, which is near where both you and I live. And so I love that guy. Kyle Shanahan loves that guy. So, I think he makes the team. But the other thing with Dalton Keene, where's number 44, which I love. Dalton Keene could be a sneaky Juice replacement on the practice squad moving forward. Again, Juice is here for another, I think, 2 years after this. I'm not positive. But yeah, could be kind of that H-back tight end guy. Keene's biggest issue has been injuries. So keep that in mind. Offensive linemen, moving on. We have all of the same. So not a whole lot of difference there. No
Very
difference.
very big on Jason Poe. I think both me and you from the beginning, when the
Yeah.
49ers were able to get him, that was one of my like steals in terms of undrafted free agents. His athletic ability. I think I remember sending you a video very early on of him
Mm-hmm.
running routes
Routes.
out of the backfield and being just
Crisp.
incredibly quick on his
Crisp.
feet, great
Yeah. It's
hands.
bonkers.
But then Trent Williams talking about how Jason Poe is like, they talk about his height and how he's smaller and he has, but
He's 6'1", 305, and has short arms.
but what does that immediately do for an offensive lineman? It gives you
Gives them the
leverage.
leverage. Yep.
I love it. I think Jason Poe has been a steal. Yeah, we have the same offensive linemen: Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Brendel, Buford, McGlinchey, Brunskill, McKivitz, Jalen Moore, and Jason Poe.
Yeah. I flip-flopped back and forth. The 49ers have shown that if you are going to be a reserve offensive lineman on this team, you have to have positional flexibility to play either outside or inside, which Colton McKivitz and Jalen Moore have. The one knock on Poe is he's a guard only, right? But theoretically,
a running back guard only.
well, yeah, fullback guard. That's that's my dream, is to see Jason Poe as the goal line fullback. Like that is my dream scenario. And I could 100% see Kyle Shanahan doing that. And so, but
Wing T, here we come, baby.
Can you imagine a wing T where Jason Poe and Kyle Juszczyk line up as lead blockers, and then you've got whoever, Elijah Mitchell, whoever you want, Deebo Samuel running the ball behind that? My God, that would be incredible.
Double tight with George Kittle and golly.
But to me, I have him making the team simply because I don't think he clears waivers. I think he's shown enough in the games that he's been in that I do think a team would pick him up. The interesting thing about Poe is that there's like one body, like essentially one player who has the same measurables as Jason Poe, and that is Shaq Mason, who has made a very nice career as a starting guard in New England and was just traded from New England to Tampa Bay this offseason. Has been a starter for New England for the past, I think, 6 or 7 seasons. So it's not unheard of for a player like that to not only make it in the league, but to succeed. And so far, I think he makes the squad because I don't think he makes it through waivers. And so while they, like I said, they prefer to have positional flexibility for their reserve linemen, meaning that they can play both tackle and guard. Theoretically, you could say, well, Poe, he could play guard, and then perhaps he's getting reps at center, moving forward. He could end up being, a center of the future possibly. But regardless, Jason Poe was determined by Jeremy, I think his name is Mike Renner of PFF, as the best pulling guard in all of college football coming out of Mercer. So definitely something that the 49ers love is a guard who can pull in that outside zone scheme. So let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to go with the defensive lineman. Again, very similar in our predictions here. We just have one player that is different. And so we both have Nick Bosa, Samson Ebukam.
Wait, you have Charles Nick Bosa making the roster?
Hold on. I mean, it was a coin flip for me. I was like, he hasn't really shown a whole lot since being drafted number 2 overall out of Ohio State, but I think they're going to give him another shot.
Prove it deal.
No, I think Nick Bosa is
gonna get
one of the front runners, and I think he's one of the front runners for Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to have a monster season.
That dude is going to get paid.
And I think he's going to be. I think his contract is going to give him over $30 million a season when they negotiate that next offseason. But Nick Bosa, Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, Drake Jackson, and Kamiko Torre, and Jordan Willis as kind of edge, with Jordan Willis also being able to slide inside every once in a while. And then Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Kevin Givens, and I have Hassan Ridgeway as the fourth, or as the last defensive lineman. The only difference you have the same Nick Bosa, Ebukam, Amenahu, Jackson, Toure, Willis, Armstead, Kinlaw, Givens, and then you have Kerry Hyder Jr. making it. I don't really disagree with that. In fact, D'Amico Ryan said today that the team gives out the defensive side of the ball. They give out an award every day called the Swarm Award, which is what was it? I can't remember. It's an award given to players who basically are always around the ball, causing turnovers, things like that. And outside of Fred Warner,
think of it like a swarm of bees, right? Like,
right.
What are they?
But I
mean,
mean,
they're going to surround.
Swarm stood for something. I just can't remember specifically. What it is. It was an acronym. It was an acronym, and I can't remember.
I don't know what that word means. I don't know what that word means.
An acronym?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I was like, come on, son. Come on, son.
You're like, whoa, you're an educator. Figure it out.
So outside of, I believe it was Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, Kerry Hyder Jr. has won that award most in camp. So the likelihood that he makes the team over Hassan Ridgeway, who hasn't even really played that much, is high. But my thought was they've got a lot of edge players, and technically Kerry Hyder is another edge player, and they don't have a lot of interior depth outside of Armstead, Kinlaw, and Givens. And so my thought was they needed another body, but Kerry Hyder Jr. also could possibly slide inside, which again would give him an advantage there. So you have Hyder Jr., I have Ridgeway.
Right. And I think SWARM, I believe, stands for, I think it's special work ethic.
That's right. Special work ethic
and relentless mindset. Relentless
mindset. Yeah.
That's the SWARM award.
That's right. Special work ethic and relentless mindset. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But Kerry Hyder's, he's the guy. Like, he's going to make it. Ridgeway just didn't show enough in that last game. He kind of got eaten up inside. He isn't doing what they need to be done, in my opinion, for him to make that spot. So that's why I went with Hyder Jr.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to linebackers. Obviously, Fred Warner going to make the team, right? Dre Greenlaw and Azeez Al-Shaair. I think, again, the 49ers can make the argument that they have the best linebacking core in the NFL. Warner, Greenlaw, and Al-Shaair are a tremendous trio. Incredibly fast, great in coverage. They fill their run gaps. And then Dre Greenlaw is just an absolute ass kicker out there. Granted, he's going to get his fair share of penalties, which might frustrate the coaching staff, but he's there to hit dudes. That's what he's there to do.
He's going to miss some tackles, and he's going to miss some assignments on occasion, but
he's also going to blow some dudes up.
Yeah,
because that's who he be.
Again, in this regime, out of those guys, who have they drafted?
Warner, Greenlaw. Al-Shaair was an undrafted free agent because he was coming off an injury.
So, all of those guys,
all of them, all of them are.
It's again. We said it earlier in the podcast. Give this front office its respect and due in terms of bringing players in who are extreme quality. Like, it just, when you look at it from top to bottom, draft or undrafted free agents who they have signed, there's not many who they've traded in for and brought in. I mean, outside of Trent Williams and Charvarius Ward and Jimmy Ward, is there anybody else?
Jimmy Ward was actually a Trent Baalke pick. He's been with the 49ers his whole career.
So those are the three.
You're saying outside of this regime. Got it.
Right.
Got it. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a draft and develop philosophy for sure. They are not an F them picks philosophy like the Rams. Though I would like to see, here's one thing that I would like to see the 49ers do this season, and that is lean on the fact that they have found such significant contributors in the later rounds of the draft. Take advantage of that, trade some of your earlier round picks and get some established guys to fill in some holes that you may have. One of those, right now that they have cap space because they restructured Jimmy's deal, give the Cincinnati Bengals a call. See if they would listen on Jesse Bates. See what it would take, right? And then sign that guy to an extension, and now you've got your replacement for Jimmy Ward. But other than that, you know, whoever becomes available by the deadline, I would love to see them, you know, possibly leverage some early round picks to bring in some players that would establish players that would, you know, supplement this roster. But as far as linebackers go, we have the same top four: Warner, Greenlaw, Alshire, Burks. Burks is a special teams ace, but has also really acquitted himself nicely during the preseason as ostensibly a starter in every game. I believe he started every game. One or more of those guys, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Alshire, have not played in every game. So Burks has got a lot of run as kind of a starter and has been pretty impressive. So I think this is the best fourth linebacker they've had in a long time, which, you know, again, is a win for this offseason, because the other theme that we didn't talk about this offseason was they upgraded the special teams, which I think is going to be huge, with Oren Burks, a guy that we're going to talk about in the safety group, George Odom, and then Ray McLeod, who is going to be the kick and punt returner. The only difference we have is that last spot, and I put this guy in just because it's more a hope of mine than it is an actual prediction. I'm just trying to throw it out in the universe, right? I'm trying to make it. I'm trying to manifest it. Kyle Madsen of the Candlestick Chronicles is probably trying to do the same. This is his guy. But I have Marcelino McCrary-Ball making the team, and you have Demetrius Flanagan-Fulls. So, you know, one of the things that you know you have to understand is whoever is the fifth linebacker in San Francisco has to have three names, and that last name has to be hyphenated. And so you have Flanagan-Fulls, I have McCrary-Ball. Marcelino McCrary-Ball was an undrafted free agent this year out of Indiana. He is a converted safety. He's a bit on the smaller side. He could stand to gain a little bit of weight, but he really fits the type that I think they look for in San Francisco, which is converted safeties. Greenlaw was a converted safety. Warner was a converted safety. I don't think Alshire was, but those two were. Demetrius Flanagan-Fulls was a converted safety. And I actually even think Oren Burks was a converted safety. So there's a type that they have. And McCrary-Ball fits that. He's younger. He's cheaper. He's faster than Flanagan-Fulls. I think he could be an asset on special teams, which is where Flanagan-Fulls has kind of made his money with the 49ers. So I think they take this opportunity to get younger and cheaper at the position and possibly look to trade Flanagan-Fulls like they did, Jonas Gray last offseason, when they traded him to the Denver Broncos, who, by the way, Jonas Gray going to start for the Denver Broncos this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done. I'm, you know, I there's not much to say. Flanagan-Fulls is, I think he's the front runner for that fifth spot, and he's going to get it. Like, yeah, I'm not, there's nothing there.
Hard to argue there.
Like,
yeah. Hard to argue there. All right. Cornerbacks. Again, we have all the same. You put Dante Johnson in a different spot, but we have Charvarius Ward, Emmanuel Mosley, Samuel Womack, Diamador Lenore, Ambry Thomas. You got Jason Verrett on IR. I have the Barnacle Dante Johnson listed here at cornerback. You still have him on the 53-man. You just have him listed under safety. I put him in the cornerback group just because I actually have a different guy at safety, or I have an added guy at safety that you don't have. Dante Johnson, I think, is very versatile, and I think they view him as both a cornerback. I think he could be the backup to slot cornerback Samuel Womack, and in a pinch, he can play safety, which he did last year. So his versatility and just the fact that he's Dante Johnson. And I mean, there isn't really any universe where Dante Johnson isn't a 49er. So I have him there. And then we both have Jason Verrett on IR. So again, we both have Tariq Castro Fields, hopefully making it to the practice squad. But those top five corners are the same for both of us.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ambry Thomas, if my 53 was Trey Sermon, 52 was Ambry Thomas. Like, it is so close.
Both third round picks last year. Yikes.
he hasn't shown to me that he has made the significant improvements in the areas that I was expecting him to. He still seems to get beat over the top. I still don't have a ton of confidence in in him, whether it be man-to-man coverage or coming up and necessarily being that a run stopper. Like, he's not doing anything at an elite level that I'm hoping for him. However, I do think he sneaks in because they move Dante Johnson to an area, at least at the beginning of the year, where they need help. And this is where we have a little bit of difference in regards to who are going to be the safeties and round out this secondary group. I wouldn't be surprised, however, at all, if the 49ers were to bring in somebody at that safety position and then move Dante Johnson into the cornerback position and Ambry Thomas gets bumped. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all, but this is where I have it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hard, again, for the same reason that I'm hard pressed to think Trey Sermon doesn't make this roster because they used a 3rd round pick on him last draft. I'm hard pressed to think that they're going to give up on Ambry Thomas already, having spent a 3rd round draft pick on him last draft. And also the fact that he kind of took a step at the end of the season last year, right? Now it feels like he's regressed a little bit, but you know, I don't know. I don't know how much that is to be expected. But like you said, I mean, his biggest struggle is he gets beat at the catch point consistently, right? His man-to-man cover skills, which is why he was drafted. It was what was the best aspect of his game. They're there, but again, he keeps getting consistently beat at the catch point. And if that's going to continue to be the case, then he's not going to be an effective coverage player in the NFL. So let's move on to safeties. Again, Jimmy Ward starting the season on IR with a hamstring tear. He'll miss at least the first 4 games. And so we have him listed here, but obviously with that IR designation. And so for me, that leaves Talanoa Hufanga, Tarvarius Moore, and George Odom. Those are the same for both of us. And then you have Dante Johnson listed at safety. I had him listed at cornerback. So I actually added an extra safety who's Tayshaun Gibson, who they brought in last week. Hasn't had a whole lot of time with the team, but he is a veteran in the NFL, has played a ton of ball, and has I believe he's made at least 1 Pro Bowl. He's a little bit on the older side. I think he's the same age as Jimmy Ward, but I think they would prefer to have somebody with at least some starting experience and some, actual solid play in the NFL, just as kind of a break glass in case of emergency situation. And that emergency would be if Tarvarius Moore cannot do what they need him to do when he fills in for Jimmy Ward, those first 4 weeks. So that is what I have for safeties.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I personally think that they would bring somebody in now with the new cap space, with the fact that the 49ers have the ability to make some actual moves right now, both at the offensive line position and at the safety position. So those are the 2 areas that if the 49ers are going to make any moves, those are the 2 positions in my mind. Offensive line and safety is where they're going to make those moves. And you know what? We just can't get Jimmy Ward back fast enough. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, for sure.
The safety position, if Hufanga is a first-year starter and we have Jimmy Ward out and either Tarvarius Moore or Odom or whoever's filling in, I'm very concerned about the safety position and how they're going to show out at the beginning of the year. That could be the weakness, the Achilles heel of the 49ers defense. That may not make them a top-tier defense to start. Sure. And it may expose some weaknesses. So
hey Tim, you know who's out there? You know who's available?
Who, Brian? Who?
Jaquiski Tartt.
If the 49ers front office didn't do him as dirty as they did
at
the end of last year, I think he would be open to coming back and a very good fit and
he would make them better.
He would make them much better.
Yep.
However, you kind of reap what you sow in this instance, and the fact that they treated him like a second-class citizen last year. We have some internal information that has basically told us that a lot of the things that were done or that Jaquiski Tartt had to go through last year was not all above board. And we'll just kind of leave it at that, out of respect for everybody involved. And I think the 49ers will make that call. I don't think Jaquiski Tartt picks up the phone. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say.
He sees that Santa Clara area code and he goes, nope. Declined.
I'm good, bro.
Yeah.
All right,
good.
let's round it out with our specialist.
Yeah, our specialists. This was a tough one, right? There is zero competition at any one of these spots. Robbie Gould, Mitch Wishnowsky, and the best long snapper in the NFL, Mr. Tabor Pepper. That rounds out our 53-man roster projection.
I'm Nigel Mitch Wishnowsky. He still looks. If you've ever seen the movie The Replacements,
yeah,
the kicker from that movie,
Nigel the Toe Gruff, right? Isn't that
Gruff?
That's what it
Gruff.
is. Gruff.
Nigel
Gruff. The chain smoking.
Oh. Ooh.
I love it. I need to see something out of Mitch this season for him to be on this team.
How thankful are you? How thankful are you that the 49ers didn't go after Matt?
Oh, for sure. Incredibly grateful now. At the time, very sad.
The things
now,
incredibly grateful. You don't really know about, right? Like a guy who can punt the ball 83 yards, but is probably going to wind up in prison. Like,
yeah. I mean, he can kick a ball far, but he's apparently also a rapist. So don't want that guy on your team, right?
Allegedly,
right? That's why I said apparently,
because the conviction hasn't happened yet.
Sure. But regardless, I mean, the reality is that at the time that girl was 17 years old, which means there doesn't have to be, there's no burden of proof there. That is, if you have relations with someone who's under 18 years old in the state of California, that is statutory rape and it's punishable by jail time. That's where we're at. And that's what he did. So
when he gets out of prison, the Cleveland Browns are going to give him a call.
Yeah.
They're going to
trade for him.
The Cleveland Browns are what the Raiders used to be. Like
at this point, right?
If you have any sort of questionable past, if you have any sort of, I don't know, like if you've done something outside of the NFL that makes you questionable in terms of character, Cleveland
Browns want you on their team.
Come on.
They're the team that employs both Deshaun Watson and Kareem Hunt and the helmet swinger Myles Garrett.
Yes.
It's
yikes.
Yeah. Cleveland Browns fans, I don't wish ill on you, and I would lovingly welcome you into the faithful fold. But F your team forever. And I hope nothing good ever happens for them.
Right now, like the people who run that organization, if everybody
the owner,
the GM, the coach, like everybody in that organization that has a say goes away, Cleveland Browns can then come back as a legitimate NFL franchise.
But only if Deshaun Watson is not still their quarterback.
Well, Kareem, like all of them, like wipe the slate clean.
No thanks. But yeah, that is our 53-man roster projection. Again, we didn't have too many differences. It'll be interesting to see where our differences lie as the cut down date approaches tomorrow. Again, it is 1 p.m. Pacific time. We've been in here for an hour and 20 minutes. We got to end this thing. Tim, before we cheese on out of here, anything you want to say to our currently three viewers, and then those that again will be listening on their favorite podcast platform?
Well, we just appreciate you being here. I know that the Denim Dungeon took some time off, and we are ultimately educators first, and 49er fans, contributors second,
content creators.
And that's something that we do out of passion, out of something that we love for the game. I've had the unique ability since the time off to make some pretty good connections. I'm actually planning a trip down to Arizona to actually watch that team that Ty Deppner coaches for, my buddy coaches for. It's going to be a lot of fun. My hope is to actually sit down with Ty at some point and just be able to chop it up for a little bit. But we're just super appreciative. Like, we've been doing some things in the background. Brian's been making big moves, obviously, with the 49er Web Zone, and now a part of No Huddle Podcast. Like, that's his first love. Hopefully we can
Get
him
out of here.
on,
That's not my first
on
love.
the Denim Dungeon. But our plan is to get back and do this regularly and
For sure.
hopefully earn the respect of our listeners back, because we've took such time off. But it's 49er season. It's good times again. I'm extremely happy. So please follow Brian Rennick at brennick77 on Twitter. Follow me at Tim Sprinkles on Twitter. We love fan interaction. We love having those interactions back and forth. We're always available, always there to comment or kind of give our 2 cents, if you will, on any occasion, if you ever need anything. Brian, that's all I got, man. Oh, and hey, our podcast is presented by El Jefe. Take a look at Brian's hat. You can see it in the bottom right-hand corner. Please, yeah, there you go. Please, if you haven't already, give it a shot. I mean, this tequila is the best out there. I absolutely
It's smooth,
love it.
baby. It is smooth.
It is fantastic. And if you do decide to drink, please drink responsibly. You got to be 21 or older to purchase or consume. But it is definitely worth it, because they're great sponsors. They're wonderful. They're great to us. Brian, what do you got?
Yes. Yeah. Visit eljefetequila.com. That is eljefetequila.com. But yeah, you know what? It's exciting to be back. I'm excited that 49ers football is coming quick, right? We've got I think it's 2 weeks now, a little less than 2 weeks. So what, 13 days before that first game. The one thing that I am a little bit sad about is I am coaching my youngest daughter's 8U fall ball softball team, and also helping coach my older daughter's 10U fall ball softball team. Those softball games are Sunday doubleheaders. And so I will be watching recorded 49er football for at least the first until about the end of October. But it's a lot of fun. We had a tournament for our 8U girls over the weekend. We had 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. We went 3-0-1. And on Saturday we scored 14 runs and we gave up only 2. So it's a good little team. I think we're going to have a fun this season. It's going to be a good little run. But outside of the 5 cities 8U Dirt Devils and the 5 cities 10U Golden Scorpions, I am excited for 49ers football. I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited to talk about it with you, and I'm excited for our fans to tune in. Again, if you're watching this right now, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. If you are watching it later, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. And if you are listening to this again on your favorite podcast platform, please feel free to share it with a friend who loves the 49ers, and go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform as well. But again, I am Brian Rennick, writer and editor at 49ers Web Zone. That is Tim Sprinkles, owner of Tank Tops and former college quarterback. We will be back next week, hopefully, as long as we feel like there's enough to talk about, and likely there probably will be.
There will be.
But if not, we will definitely be back after that first game. And we appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. And we will see you guys later.